Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
The secret formula to abundance. Who wouldn't want to know it? What if abundance is less about the newest techniques and more about changing how we think and live? Oh no, anything but that, right? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore abundance and life change is Derek Rydall. Derek is the author of Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change, and The Abundance Project. His diverse background includes training top executives at Fortune 500 companies in empowered leadership and communications, and coaching celebrities and media professionals on creating conscious entertainment. His website, DerekRydall.com. Derek, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It's my honor and pleasure to be here.
So what's your educational background, Derek?
Let's see. I graduated early in high school because I wanted to be an actor. So I left high school for the big screen, and then I had a near-death experience while I was an actor, and I went on a whole different level of learning after that. Became a monk, and then the monk life wasn't quite the right life for me, and I ended up cloistering myself in my apartment in Hollywood, North Hollywood area. And really that was the beginning of my true educational journey. But I did some college, but not traditional. My real education started after I basically had a near-death experience, really my second one.
So tell us what led up to a near-death experience. How'd that come about?
Yeah, so like so many people, I'd spent a lot of years trying to improve myself and fix myself and become enough so that I could have enough. And that led me to become more anxious, more frustrated, ultimately led me to become addicted to drugs and alcohol. And that led to an overdose where I basically almost died. And I just understand how all of my efforts to improve myself had led me to that when I was in the emergency room with an IV snaking out of my arm and the doctor telling me I was lucky to still be alive. And I just figured I needed to work harder, work smarter, attract better. And things got better for a little while. And then I found myself doing a movie in Jamaica as an actor. And everything began to fall apart again. And I went diving in a coral reef, and I would just remember praying to get lost from everything above. So my first tip, kids, be careful what you pray for, because it's powerful stuff. I got lost, very lost, and ultimately trapped in what looked like an underwater booby-trapped tomb out of an Indiana Jones movie, and surrounded by fire coral and rows of spiked coral that would skewer me if I breathed too deeply, if I lifted my head out of the water, if I tried to swim down. I was really, truly trapped. And nobody knew I was there, and nobody was coming to save me, and it was starting to get dark, and it was a long ordeal. And at a certain point, I tried to bargain with God, with the universe. I promise if you get me out of this, I'll go to church. I was trying that, let's make a deal. And the universe was not playing let's make a deal. And there was a moment where finally I knew I wasn't going to make it. And it's hard to understand that experience. It wasn't like, ooh, I hope I do, and maybe I won't. I knew I wasn't. And all that was left was a profound surrender, complete unconditional surrender. And in that moment of letting go, there was a flash of light. And I saw the self I'd been trying to fix, change, heal, and improve. And he was a figment of my imagination, an amalgamation of parental fantasy and peer pressure and societal conditioning, and nothing I would ever do would ever make him enough. But I also saw there was another self, and this self was already whole and complete, so it could not be improved upon. And it had never been damaged or broken So there was nothing to fix. And in the next moment, I was standing outside of the reef on top of this little block of coral that I couldn't see from where I had been underneath. And I suddenly could see this was a metaphor for my life. I'd been swimming through this maze, following all these brightly colored objects, and was drowning, gasping, metaphorically and emotionally. And in this moment, I suddenly understood everything was shimmering. And I knew something had profoundly shifted in me. Humpty Dumpty had fallen off the wall, and there was no putting it back together. I was able to swim over the other side and go free. But again, the guy that swam out was not the same guy. And after that moment, that's when I pulled out of society. I went to a monastery, tried to become a monk. Did not work out so well eventually, fasting and silence. And I went a little crazy, broke into the monk's kitchen to steal food at one point, had a crazy out-of-body experience, first time ever, and kind of like ran out of the monastery, deciding that was not for me. But that's what started my real education, my real journey of what happened to me and who is this self that I touched. And I began to see that, which I'm sure we'll get into, because it really is behind the secret to the wealth, the abundance, the success, and all the things that unfolded after that. Because I was broke, I was broken. I was leaving suicidal. I was living in a one-room apartment, living off mac and cheese. After this experience and what I learned from it, which I eventually coined the law of emergence, my whole life began to unfold in the ways I wanted and ways I could have never imagined, but without the same level of struggle and efforting that I had before.
That's quite the story.
Yeah, it was.
How do you, so where do you get your information at this point?
Well, I'm an avid student of history, and I read, 50 plus books a year, and I'm a deep student and deep researcher. But the most important information, the stuff I mostly teach, most of my research is more of a corroboration of what I've already seen through this journey of inner education. I would read the great ancient texts, the great spiritual texts. I could not understand them. After that experience, I went back and I would read them, and suddenly they all made sense. And not only that, but I could see they were all fundamentally saying many of the same things. And so yes, there's still a deepening, but most of all the texts of transformation are either saying the same thing to me, or they're kind of at a different level, right? They're more at the level of trying to use quote unquote spirituality or mental or metaphysics to make stuff happen. Whereas what I discovered is the deepest spiritual teaching and truth is everything is already here. It's already within us and all around us. And you can't make it happen, but you can make it welcome. And I'll use one quick analogy that was what came to me during that period. I was in nature and I saw a seed. It was an acorn. And I saw that the oak tree, the pattern of the oak is already in that acorn. And in the quantum field, the whole oak is there. The whole frequency of the oak is there. And so you cannot make that oak tree happen. When the conditions become right for that pattern, the oak emerges. When there's alignment. Or put another way, your favorite music is playing right now, but we can't hear it. It's right here in the field. And if you tune the dial of a radio to that frequency where that music is playing, that station becomes manifest. Or as I like to say, you have a manifestation, right? So the music is already playing, the music of the spheres, the beat of abundance, the symphony of success, wholeness, wellness. It's already here. And this is what all the great master teachers were teaching. And that's what I suddenly saw in that blinding moment. And then spent the next decade trying to figure out what I saw and put it into practice, what to do with it, and actually to embody it in real world experiences.
So given that, would you define abundance as we're going to be speaking of it here? There's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Yeah. Well, abundance, first of all, is the nature of life. Look around you. Everywhere is abundance. As the one master teacher, Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. The abundance is everywhere. But the manifestation of abundance in nature, and the same with us, is not how much comes to you, but about how much you can allow to come from you and through you. The fruit tree's demonstration of abundance isn't that a bunch of birds like Cinderella fly and hang some fruit on its branches like a Christmas tree. The demonstration of abundance is the emergence of what is already in the tree. When the flower blooms from the seed of a rose, that's abundance. And so real abundance is the full flowering and flourishing, allowing of what is already innately in us. It's not about an amount or a quantity as much as it is a quality of fulfillment and full expression.
So rather than chasing after abundance or trying to work it, trying to make it happen, we're bringing ourselves to the frequency where it already exists.
Yes, like again, so in that example, I was struggling to pay my bills. I was literally living on a prayer and being called and ready to be evicted before this breakthrough happened. And then what I saw was, as I was in meditation one day, the voice spoke to me and said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." I'm like, what? Looking for Charlton Heston, holding some tablets. And it basically showed me how I've been making my bank account or my credit card or just different people and situations my source of safety, security, support, and supply or abundance. And I had to come back and remember that not to lean on the resources, but to lean on the source. And as I began to practice and be in that state in that moment and take away where I'd given my agency and power away to all these external sources, suddenly it was as if a pressure valve opened and I was filled up from within. It's not fulfillment, it's fulfillment. I was suddenly filled up. All of my energy to try to make stuff happen was like blocking what was a natural channel. And I was filled up and I had a peace. I suddenly understood the meaning of a peace that passeth all understanding. It was a peace the world didn't give me. It was the peace of one that is being filled up from within. And I fell asleep. And I woke up, and for the next few days, I was just wandering around kind of at peace. And my mind was like, "Derek, don't you know you're going to get evicted? Don't you know you're broke?" I'm like, okay. I just felt so peaceful. And I suddenly got a phone call, and it was my ex-acting agent. He said, "I know you're too spiritual to do commercials now, but they called looking for you to do this Pepsi commercial with who was at the time a big fashion model." And I said, okay. And I showed up, and for 2 days' work, I made more money than I ever made in a year. Now, that was never even on my vision board. But when I allowed myself to be filled up, it emerged as the best and the quickest path to abundance. And that's an example of money, but there's many other examples of love, what you
Well,
name it.
it's that wonderful time where we need to take a station break. Derek and I will return very shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. God Abundance. With us this hour, discussing abundance through life challenges and changes, is Derek Rydall. Derek is the author of Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change, and The Abundance Project. His website, DerekRydall.com. Derek, how can we access this? You say that abundance is simply an energy, okay, that we need to tune into, if you will, and trust that whatever comes through will be exactly what we need versus what we think we want.
Yes.
How can we tune into this? What's the process here?
Well, that's the first step, right? There's a reason why the OG spiritual self-help principle is know thyself, right? That's like the original Greek, the above the cave, the Apollo and the Oracle of Delphi. It was know thyself. That was step one. Because if you know who, which is to say, know that pattern in you, know what is that seed pattern. If a gardener is planting a seed and she doesn't know what that seed is, it's going to be very difficult to know what are the right conditions for that seed so that it is congruent, so that it flourishes and it flowers. You might give it sunlight and it needs shade, or vice versa. So the first step is we have to know ourselves. And as we know ourselves, we're asking, what am I really made of and made for? What is it in me that's trying to come out? And there's also a saying in Proverbs that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so if we don't know who we are and where we're going, what we're really meant to be and to do, then every road is going to get us lost. And we're going to be trying to be a lot of things that we're not. Like in my example, that false self that I was trying to fix, change, heal, and improve, and the message was, you'll never do it, it's impossible, is because it wasn't me. It was my parents' idea of me, my friends, society. I had made up a false self. And when it comes to nature and the natural process of abundance and emergence, if you try to make an acorn an apple tree, you're going to fail. Nobody can make an acorn an apple tree. Jesus could come down and pray. That's never going to become an apple tree. And so we can never become what we're not. We can try and we can struggle, but our experience will be resistance, crises, challenges, and problems. And we'll think that life is against us or what's wrong with me. But really what's happening is we're trying to be something we're not, or we're resisting being who we really are. So the step one is we got to know ourselves. We got to tell the truth about what we really, really want, not just what we think we can have, not just what we think we should do, not what we think will make others happy, but what deeply do we want to be, do, create, and contribute. And then we have to do the work to bring ourselves into integrity with that. It's like tuning that dial.
So it occurs to me that part of the problem is we don't know what we want.
Exactly. It's a big
We
problem. I've worked
a
with
lot of
hundreds of thousands of people, and it's like the number one problem.
a lot of what we think we want are solutions, made up solutions to perceived problems that may or may not even be there.
Yes.
And so knowing thyself is the first step. But what about knowing your patterns, knowing your damage?
Exactly. So see, the know yourself isn't just it's a process, right? So as you start to really sincerely want to know yourself, because let's be very honest, there's a joke about the guy that's lost his key and he's outside in the dark looking under the street lamp for his key, and the neighbor comes by, helps them. An hour later, the neighbor's like, "Where'd you lose it?" And the guy says, "Well, I lost it inside, but the light's so much better out here." So the problem is we don't really want to know ourselves because it's kind of scary and we have not been taught. But yes, the first step is to really know, what do I really feel? Like in any moment, you can just stop and say, what am I really feeling about this? And then you can ask, if that feeling had a voice, what would it say? And you'll start to hear things. And you can ask, what's the voice in me that I haven't been willing to hear? What's a feeling I haven't been willing to feel? What is trying to happen that's calling me to take action that I don't want to know about? As you begin to ask those kind of questions, you will start to know what's really going on in me. And then as you say, well, what do I really want? Let's say I want to have love and health and abundance or a successful business, whatever it is. As you're doing this work to have an expanded awareness, another word for this is metacognition. It's the ability to think about what you're thinking about, to look down in your mind and your emotions and see what's really happening. You'll start to see, here's what I want, and here's my beliefs and stories and patterns that say I can't have it, I shouldn't have it, it's impossible. So I have my objective, and now I can see the obstacle. And once you have that expanded awareness, you actually have the beginning of free will. Until then, you have free won't. It's just resistance.
You get to be a puppet. So,
Exactly.
so what is it inside, or that we perceive that is inside, that we're so afraid of? Because I know this fear. I've felt it myself. Like,
Yes.
oh, if I look too deeply, I'm going to find out I'm all the things that I hate.
Yes.
Something like
Yes.
that. What is that fear, and where does it
Yeah.
come from?
Well, it's funny you just laugh when you said that. When I do this work, there's a work I do shadow work, and that's a shadow laugh. And so it's true. There's a lot of stuff we hate and judge and think is bad and ugly and wrong, and then we project it on the world. And then we see people we don't like, we hate, we judge, they trigger us, but it's all a projection of an unintegrated part of ourselves. But the really good news is that that thing you hate is actually containing gold. It contains real wisdom. What does a plant grow out of? The dirt. The dark, dank, smelliest dirt is the best. That's the most fertile soil. What did Jesus say? Love your enemy. Where did he say the enemy was? The enemy is in your own household. So inside of us is the enemy, is the problem. And we've been thinking we got to fix it, change it, heal it, get over it, ignore it, cut it away, or stop the projection of it out there called the bad people. But actually, if we just meet it with understanding, if we just hear it and hold it, we can heal it. And healing it doesn't mean turning our stupid self into a smart self. It means understanding that the stupid self, when you love it and understand it, is the student self. It's the part of you that does not have the answers and never will. And then when that gets to be integrated in your heart, you can stay curious, stay a student. And suddenly, all of this potential wisdom and adventure begins to move through you that wasn't possible before. So as we become whole by integrating all these parts we've been ignoring, denying, and judging, we create the structure and the channel for life to flow through us more. And that's one of the most important pieces that allows us to begin to blossom and for abundance to show up.
So we all have these tapes, things that run in
Yes.
our mind
Yes.
about the way life is, the way we are, this and that. And for the most part, it's kind of running back there and we don't notice it.
Right.
How important is it to bring these forth and figure out where they came from? Do they have validity? And dismantling them if they don't. How important is that?
Well, again, as I said, the first step in really having agency and sovereignty, which is our divine birthright, is we do have to know what's running us, right? As I said, without expanded awareness, you do not have free will. The atheists and scientific people are right, there's no free will. Most people are afraid of the robots coming to replace us. I have good news, bad news. The robots have already replaced most humans. Most humans are just robots being driven by these programs. But when we get expanded awareness and we start to see it, we start to have choice. And then we can choose not to react to that belief, to that fear, to that story, which is all part of the simulation of our mind. And we can instead choose, I feel you, I hear you, like the kids acting up and throwing tantrums, and I don't want to go. No, you can't make me. And you're like, I hear you, honey, I love you, but you're still coming. And like you put them in the back seat, give them an iPad, little video game to play, and you go. So it's like, what do you want to create? What's the life you want to be? Who is it that you want to be? You feel the fear, you feel the doubt, you feel the judgment, you hold it, and you still can take the step. And so you start to discover that as you do that, it's not about fixing. It is about giving it space, hearing it. These are parts of you that somewhere in your timeline, they didn't get heard. They didn't felt seen. They didn't get understood. And so they're still hurting and they're stuck at that point in your development. So when you meet them and you see them and you hear them and you hold them without trying to fix them, they relax. They reveal their gift and they stop throwing tantrums and blocking and stopping and sabotaging you. And they become part of your team. And you have a crazy team in you. But when you get them all back on the team, on your side, the things you've been trying to make happen or get, you discover you've already got. You feel more whole, you feel more complete, you feel more empowered. And then it unfolds. That pattern in you gets the life and the energy to do what is needed the inspired thinking, the compelling right action flows through you, and your life begins to flourish and to unfold. Now, there's one other little way in which knowing your life story is valuable for all of you people that want to be teachers, speakers, authors, healers, entrepreneurs, creators, change makers, whatever. You want to make a difference somehow. The journey you've been through, the workshop you've been living, is the workshop you're meant to be giving. I call it the life code. So the challenges you've been through, where you've turned the poison of your past into the medicine of the present, as you understand your life story, not as a problem, but as a journey of developing certain gifts, talents, and abilities and embodied wisdom, and then you embed that in your life, in the way you live your life. As Gandhi said, my life is my message. As Gandhi also said, become the change. So as you do that, you heal your life story and you embody the wisdom that your life already has. And you become the change you've been looking for, and you become a light in the world.
So it sounds like the process of socialization fragments out these parts of us, and we
Yes.
judge against them. And then it's
Yeah.
our job to go back in on a treasure hunt, if you will,
Yes.
face the pain of that loss,
Yes.
and then reintegrate the part of ourselves that we've become disconnected from. Am
Yes.
I following so far?
Absolutely. And it's a brilliant way to say it. Go ahead. Was there more?
Yes. My question was, do you need a mentor to do that, or are you your own mentor? I mean, that's pretty deep inside work.
It is
Does it
deep
help to
inside.
have a mentor?
I mean, that's my honest experience was I tried for 10 years to do it on my own, piecemeal it. And there's certainly a value. There's some periods of our life we have to go into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. We have to go into the cave, metaphorically speaking. We do ultimately have to figure it out ourselves, even if we have a mentor. If you meet Buddha on the road, shoot him, kind of thing. But there's a moment where you can't go any further on your own, is my experience. And the idea of mentor, it's an archetype, it's a principle, just as community is. And I really believe we fragmented in a way. We think community is a luxury, or family is a luxury, or mentorship and apprentice is just this old-fashioned idea.
Well, I hate to do this to us. We're going to have to leave a cliffhanger because it's time for yet another station break. Derek and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. Why can't I ever get what I want? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing creating what you want in life is Derek Rydall. His website, derekrydall.com. Derek, what's the law of attraction? We haven't hit that yet. What's the law of attraction?
Well, the law of attraction is a principle that there's four basic levels of growth. There's where you think life is happening to you and you're a victim. There's the second level where you believe you're happening to life and you're a creator of some kind, you're a doer. And the third level is where you realize life is happening through you. And the fourth level is life is happening as you. That's the final stage of integration. So a lot of people are at a stage of victimhood. They think life's happening to them. When they move into the stage of mind and agency, law of attraction lives in that stage. First, it was Protestant work ethic. You can do things and make stuff happen. Then law of attraction became a more mind-based metaphysical idea or principle where you're using the mind to create a visualization and do all these things, but it's still a form of manipulation. It's still a form of, using your mind when there is a law of mind. Mind is matter in liquidity and matter is mind in solidity. So if you change your mind, really, the matter that is your mind and expression will change. So that's the law of attraction. It looks like it's being attracted to you, but it's actually an optical illusion. In the same way that you go, hey, let's watch the sunrise or the sunset, but that's not actually what's happening. And it's not very romantic to go, hey, let's watch the planet revolve. And that's what's happening. The planet's revolving, giving you the optical illusion of a rising and setting sun. What's really happening with attraction, and that's the next level, is emergence. When you come into alignment and congruence, as we've been talking about, that which is already implicit becomes explicit. That which is already involuted is evoluted, it evolves, it unfolds, it emerges. Now, so that's what's really happening when you think you're attracting things. It's really emerging in the field of consciousness. Now, the problem that I found, what I call the unattractive side of the law of attraction, is that if you think you're separate from something, and now you're going to do all this work mentally to attract it, you might attract a bigger paycheck, but you'll find yourself just broke at a higher income bracket because you will have taken that limited or lack or separation mindset with you. Whereas the third level, emergence, you're not attracting anything. You're not buying into the lie and the illusion that you're separate from your abundance, from your whatever. You're understanding and starting with everything I need is already within me. Let me come into alignment with it. Let me come into integrity with it. And then, as I described, there's some degree of filling up. There's some degree of inspiration, of fulfillment. And now what happens is you become an instrument of inspiration and compelling guidance and serendipity. And you're not attracting. It looks to people like you are, but you know better. You know you've already arrived before that manifestation shows up. And you are now, actually, as Gandhi said, you have become the change at that new level. You didn't have to use will and mental might to make anything happen. It was a much more humble and courageous quest to come into integrity. And now when the wealth or the love or the success shows up, it fits you. And you don't have to keep struggling to keep it. Does that make sense?
It does. And one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of the formulas for abundance involves will and decide what you want and set your sights on it. When you do that, aren't you blocking out all the other magnificent ways your needs could be met,
Well,
except
you're
for the
saying a
ones that
lot.
you can see?
Exactly. You're saying a lot there. First of all, I don't think it was me. I think this was Michael Beckwith, another great teacher and mentor of mine, who said, where there's a will, there's a wall. But where there's a willingness, there's always a way. So that's true. When we're using our personal will, we can make stuff happen, but it is an egoic making happen. And it may or may not be for our ultimate highest good or the highest good for everyone, right? Because we're really not separate individuals. We're part of a larger ecosystem. And all the unsustainability we see in the world, the polarization, the fragmentation, the ecological devastation, whatever, is a byproduct of a bunch of false separate senses of selfhoods willing their way around and maybe or maybe not having anything to do with the bigger idea, the bigger plan. So yeah, and from a personal level, when you are willing to get in touch with that space we've been talking about, yes, you can start with what you want, but know that my greatest idea of what I want, God is like, oh, that's so cute, kid. Nice start, but you didn't say nothing yet, right? And so it's okay to start there. It's a way to get a frequency, to get an energetic, and then to come into alignment with it. But then you have to be available to the adventure. Life is not a problem to be solved. It's an adventure, a mystery to be lived. And if you look at your life at the best things that have ever happened to you, I bet you'll find that many, if not most of them, were not planned. Were not on your vision board. You didn't fall in love truly because that was exactly the type of person or the right thing you thought, right? But nevertheless, here it is, right? And so you probably had no idea what your children were going to be like. And they're like, oh my God, but it turns out it's everything and more that you really needed and ultimately wanted. So I like to say, plan your life as if you're doing all the work, but then live your life as if God is. And that's the Tao.
The Tao. So let's take this on a larger scale. I don't think anybody can look around us right now, particularly in this country, and not go, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Um, what is this a result of? There's a reality out there, and we all feel like we're subject to it. But if we're creating it, how did we create this?
And when you say the reality, can you give us a couple specifics for your personal sense of what you see as being crazy, or, I know it's kind of obvious, but, everybody has different opinions.
Well, looking at the government, what's going on there? That's a huge one. The
Yeah,
interrelationships between the countries, that's a
yeah,
huge one.
yeah,
I mean, we're in very tumultuous times,
yeah,
and of course, I know they were prophesized. What's going on
yeah,
within
yeah.
this framework?
And they were, and so yeah, there's a couple. This is what life is so interesting. Is life is so multidimensional. And that's why a great work of art, you can interpret it at so many levels. You can just, on the surface, it's a beautiful flower or it's a beautiful image, but there's levels symbolically that are happening. The first thing to understand is that there's only one fundamental thing happening, and that is life with only one agenda. The meaning of life is the never-ending, ever-expanding expression of life. That's it. It's a perfect pattern of infinite good and infinite abundance, forever unfolding, glory to greater glory, world without end. That's all that's happening. We are individualized consciousness or aspects of life. Life is infinite. Life could not know itself without individual experience. So we're the way life, infinite life, gets to have an experience of itself. So we're conscious, and we're on a process and in a project of becoming maturely conscious, to be able to be consciously available to choose life, to tell the truth, to say yes to that emerging impulse, and not get caught up by the product of that, the appearance of that, the stuff that creates, right? What I call, there's relative perception and projection of the infinite perfection. And when we get caught up in the perception and the projection, we create an identity, an ego, a belief, and a story about life, a concept that becomes our new matrix and our new belief system. And then the ego fights to hold on to it at all costs. But we can keep coming, and that's what we've got. We've got a world of perceptions and projections, some universal and some individual. And so this is not the world. What we see is the projection of universal belief up to now. But underneath it, there is a larger perfection. There is a bigger idea trying to emerge. And again, as I said earlier, if you're fighting what's true, it'll look like life is against you. It'll look like crises and challenges, but it's really just life and love trying to fulfill itself as us. So the more we can listen, not try to fix and save the world, but serve the truth that is emerging. Serve the love that is emerging rather than save the world. One by one, we will begin to be those oases in the desert, the calms in the storm, the lighthouse in the fog. One by one, we'll light it up. And then they will see that, and people will start to vibrate with that. They will be able to remember who they are. And one by one, this new heaven, this new earth will emerge. But it's not going to be by fixing, changing, and controlling the world. It's going to be by having the courage to know ourselves, to be ourselves, to tell the truth to ourselves, and then to tell the truth to whoever's next in line. That's the process by which evolution happens, spiritually speaking.
Before we're able to change things, the old has to disintegrate. Is that
Yeah.
part of what we're looking at here?
Absolutely. So, we talked about the acorn. That acorn, if it had self-consciousness like we do, it would believe it's a nut. And it would just want to be the best nut in the forest, right? And when it gets planted in the dirt, what is that? That's literally a tomb. We put the little seed into a little tomb where it dies. But then what resurrects? The tree. So the journey and the process of creation and growth is a never-ending journey of death and rebirth, creation and destruction. But it's not death and rebirth like the day you were born, you call your birthday, and the day you die. That's why Jesus said you must die daily and be reborn again. Not once, over and over and over again. But what are you dying to? You're dying to your identities, to your beliefs, to your opinions, to your concepts. When you grow spiritually for real, you constantly have to kill off the God you had yesterday, because you had a God you were praying to one day, and the next day you have a realization there is no such God. And it's pretty scary at first, but then you have to let that childish idea of God go. And just like a child has to let go of the childish idea of I need mommy and daddy to make me safe, there's a death. And so we have to keep letting go of our beliefs, our opinions, our concepts. And when we're hitting a crisis or a chronic problem, the message isn't that you're bad. The message is you're trying to survive in a world concept that is too small for who you really are now. Something's trying to emerge. And that's what's happening in the world en masse. All the conflict and chaos is in part we're trying to hold on to old ideas, and something else is trying to emerge. And that's where the prophet comes along. That's where the seer, the statesperson, the true leader comes along, throughout history, is often in times like this.
Well, we can sure use them now. But
one little thing I'll say, the difference is it's not one leader. Oh, go ahead.
It's time for another station break. Please stay with us as Derek and I continue to explore obtaining abundance. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. We're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xnbn.net. Success. How do I work it? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Derek Rydall. His website, derekrydall.com. Derek, we have concepts of what success looks like, and we set our goals, and we feel successful if we reach them. What do you have to say about that approach?
Wait, say that like that. You're funny with your big giant questions. Like what do you mean exactly? Like, say that one more time.
Okay, so we want to be successful, okay?
Right.
But we're not sure what that looks like, but we have some idea. We design what successful looks like.
Right.
And then we set our will and stay focused, and we try to succeed.
Yes.
What's wrong with that approach?
Well, again, like I said before, there's nothing wrong with it. It's all about steps and stages. So having our plan, like I said, we plan our life as if we're doing all the work, and then we live our life as if God is. So having an idea, a goal, something we're going toward, right? You need the goal. And it's important that you set a goal. We are literally target-seeking creatures. We evolved for that. And by the way, incidentally, to be in sin is an archery term. It means to miss the target or miss the mark. So if we don't have a target we're aiming at, we are missing the mark by definition. So there's nothing wrong with having a target. And the next thing to understand is the purpose of the target or the goal, your object of success, is not about how much you can get. And it's not about setting goals or targets you think you can do. It's about setting something based on what you most deeply desire, that deep desire, that passion that you can't do, right? As JFK said, we will go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard, right? Like you need a hard goal. And what that does is it activates an evolutionary response and it pulls more out of you. And then on your way to that, you change. And the process of transformation, like tuning in, you start to see and know and understand parts of yourself, which often changes the goal, right? Like a great story, the hero or heroine's journey, they often start off with what's called the false goal, right? And on their way through the trials, tribulations, meeting with the mentor, and all that stuff, the atonement with the father, they change. And suddenly they grow up, they become mature, and they realize we have to put away childish things, and there's a much bigger purpose here. So that's the evolution. But if you don't start with a big goal, you won't evolve, you won't grow.
But if you don't let go of the goal when it's time to let go of it and let it evolve, then you're stuck
And you're stuck. Exactly.
chasing something that doesn't fit anymore.
Exactly, which is what
And
we're
that
talking about before.
and that describes the state of the world today, right? We let
It's
people outside of ourselves tell us what we want,
right.
buy into it, and then
Yeah.
chase after it
Yeah.
to nauseam.
Yes.
Who's running that show? Obviously, we
Well,
aren't.
we are. We have the full agency. Understand that we're not really in the world, but the world is in us. And so, again, we can get as metaphysical as we want, but we are literally consciousness, awareness, moving around in our own consciousness, and where we focus, that's where the energy flows, and that's what we experience. We do not experience the world as it is. We experience the world as we are. So it doesn't matter what the world's doing, right? Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years, tortured, and yet he became free. So free, he became the president and ended apartheid, not after prison. While he was in prison, he attained that consciousness so that when he left, it was very, very fast that he became president, he ended apartheid. So no matter what the state of the world is, the great truth and the good news is if we have the courage to know ourselves, what we're made of and made for, and to be ourselves fully, unapologetically, from this place, to have the highest target in service of love and to truth and the highest good for all, and then we're willing to be the change that we want to see in the world, no matter what the world does. And what we'll find is we grow, we unfold, and the more we do, the more life pours through us. Because life's like, oh my God, come over here, we got one. We got one that's willing to be an instrument of all of it, of love, of life. And now, bam, you get more opportunity. Bam, by the way, means blessed and multiply. But you get more opportunity, you get more abundance flowing through you, because life doesn't need to pour abundance through somebody sitting on the couch. Life doesn't need to pour abundance through somebody sitting in a victim story. There's nothing, you're not doing anything. But if you're willing to be more and more, if you have a big enough target in service of the highest good, now life says, you are my beloved, in whom I am well pleased, and all that I have is yours. I will open up the windows of heaven and pour forth a blessing too big for you to receive. That's the promise, and that's a principle, and that's how we get to it. We want to not be influenced by the world. To the extent we're influenced by the world, we have no influence. We're being pulled along. And that includes the world of our partner, our family, our children, our boss, right? Don't just think it's about the government. But we use that as our mirror to show us where we're living. We love all those parts of ourselves that are getting triggered and angry and sad and scared. We have a big vision, a big target that we really want, that's too big for us to do, which means we have to die, and be born and grow. And that altogether is the machine we build inside of us, of a never-ending circulation of wealth, abundance, and wisdom and genius. And that's the process, how we keep unfolding.
So it goes back to where we started the conversation, in that you say you have to die to yourself every day, basically. So we set a goal. We set a goal, and we think we know ourselves. We know ourselves to the best of our ability at that time. But on the journey, the hero's journey of going towards that goal, The goal needs to be reevaluated. We need to be reevaluated. We need to be flexible, and we need to be willing to let go of what we think is and embrace the next level of what
Yes.
is. Okay.
Yes.
I think I'm
Brilliantly said. And that's why that's part of the structures. And that is the structure of the master apprentice principle is in principle, there's a master in you. And that master is that ideal. That ideal. I want to be an instrument of pure love, or I want to, whatever that ideal is. And it's also the judge. So compared to that ideal, you always see where you're lacking. And as you're going for that, on a regular basis, you confer with the master, you confer with the mentor in you. Now, sometimes it's very helpful to have that show up on the outside. So I can sit down with my mentor, my coach, my teacher, and go, here's where I'm going. I'm not sure, something feels off. And then through that process of reflection, that mentor, coach, whatever, can help me realign again. But eventually you also you internalize that mechanism of a constant, what's called successive approximation. And as you're assessing, where am I? Where am I going? Oh yeah, let me get back on track. And then you get knocked off. Where am I going? Oh yeah, let me get back on track. And again, it evolves. It's not that the purpose evolves, it's that your perception gets clearer. And as your perception purifies, because you're going for it and you're letting stuff go, you see more clearly what the goal is, what the purpose is. And it's a never ending process of purification.
So that goes right in with life purpose. We have a life purpose. It might remain the same, but how we relate to it and how we live it evolves and evolves and
Exactly.
evolves.
Exactly.
Is there can we choose our pacing, because this is intense work? And if we're, not in my case, but if we're in the middle of the throes of bringing up small children, but we still want to keep our eye on the prize, if you
Yes.
will, can we pace it in such a way that we can accommodate the life we have to get to the life we want?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, let's say yes and no. And here's how it's yes. All we can do is what we can do. We're all doing our best. And also understand even our idea of pace is often just our idea of the pace, right? This is too slow. I should be going faster. I'm going to miss out. When you really get down to it, it's about not having any judgment. It's about, I'm present. This is what's emerging. This is what's real. This is what's true. This is the season I'm in. And the season I'm in right now is raising children. And I also notice there's another part of me that really wants more. Great. What is that more? Articulate it. I also want to be doing my art or writing a book or talking to an adult, whatever it might be. I've been through that journey with children. And that's part of the process, just giving yourself the space to listen. And, whatever that looks like to you, journaling it. For some people, just doing that, I feel like I'm honoring myself. I'm respecting myself. Again, you might be dealing with a sick parent. Life happens. Like there's seasons and there's reasons and there's things that last a lifetime that we have to deal with. So the key is, if we think we should be doing more or we think we can't do more, that's what we want to get curious about, wherever it's got rigid lines. And instead just listen to, but what's true? What's true? If I'm honest, I just want to be with my child right now. And I've got this pressure because I used to be a full-time professional. Or if I'm honest, I feel guilty that I want more than just my child. Great. Those are both legitimate and both deserve you to be with that part of you. What does it feel like? What is it saying? Hear it, hold it, let it be on your team. As you listen, it will give you guidance. Follow the guidance step by step, and then the path will unfold.
So if you stay present versus worrying about the future or regretting the past,
Yeah.
and then see what's on your plate in that moment. If you have had a goal, if you are trying to follow your life's purpose, if you will everything that presents itself lead you there anyway?
Well, ultimately, again, we always have to define terms. Like for me, we all have the same purpose, and that is to be an instrument of the never-ending, ever-expanding expression of life and love and the good, the true, the good, and the beautiful. We all have the same purpose, but within that because that's life's purpose. But within that purpose, we all have unique missions, and that mission is in some area of the greater idea. We have to embody it, some idea, right? And so we end up showing up, believing a lie. What I call the core wound is the moment we have to believe a lie about ourselves or about life in order to survive. And then we develop all these coping strategies, but that's also the core initiation. And there's some idea there that we have to prove to ourselves and embody. And that's our unique mission. So
Well, I hate to do this, Derek, but you know what? We're out of time in the show. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your thoughts.
yes, well, I hope it was a benefit, and I'm just so grateful to be here and wish everybody so much love and blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our guest this hour has been Derek Rydall, author of Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change, and the Abundance Project. His website, derekrydall.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our evolving world.